Hi guys, and welcome to week 11 where we're going to tick off programming. We're going to look at the fundamental concepts and principles of program design. Now, a lot of the stuff we're going to cover today is in the context of strength and resistance program, which is predominantly what we work with in the gym at APE. But what I want to sort of extend the thought process is that the same principles will still apply to different training elements. And as you start to spend more time in different training experiences and learning experiences, you'll start to see how the principles transfer. And it's really just a manipulation of how you conceive the different thought processes of the training qualities you're trying to develop. So we're going to use the context of strength and resistance or gym-based training today, but understand that broadly these principles transfer to most training qualities. And again, if you guys have any questions about this stuff specifically, we can work on some projects that look at and some examples that look at different sessions, such as a speed and agility session or a plyometric session, that sort of stuff. Anyway, the main things we're going to go over today is briefly going to talk about our training philosophy in a second, but fundamentally we're going to go over sort of two of the main programming principles. So we're going to look at the SAID principles and the FIT principles. We're going to look at some training guidelines, so specifically around volume intensity and different training goals. We're going to break down two of the main programming tools that you'll come across in sort of modern day S&C, which is Excel and Team Builder. And then we're going to have a breakdown on three examples, moving from sort of the most fundamental form of resistance or powerlifting training into a sports strength and conditioning setting across those examples. So as I mentioned, guys, I'm just going to go over our philosophy now. So basically what we try to create APE is essentially the most important training program is the program that is completed. Execution and outcome is the only priority. If the task cannot be completed as prescribed, then the task is wasted. So the main thing to understand here is that it doesn't matter what we put down on paper or in the app or in a program, if it is unachievable by the athlete, it is completely wasted. So despite what might be the perfect progression or the perfect area to go, or what would be the greatest thing to achieve within a 4-week or 8-week block or something, if it cannot be practically implemented and executed, it is completely wasted. And so our goal is to try and create something that can be completed as appropriately as possible for that individual. Programming must be outcome driven and within an attainable bandwidth of those completing it. What I mean by that is that we need to have clear benchmarks about what we're trying to achieve and a purpose. We're not having people just come in and train for the sake of it and to facilitate some sort of training experience. What we're trying to create is fundamental outcome driven process about where we're trying to get them to go and making it within an attainable bandwidth. Okay, so making it realistic. Fundamentally, we need to understand what level an individual is at and where they need to get to. So what's really important there is that we are honest and accurate in our assessment of their capacity and then addressing them along that capacity, despite what time of season they might be in, what phase of development, etc. It's about understanding where the individual is placed. And so based off that, we use the simple concepts of simple before complex training, slow movements before fast movements, general patterns before specific, ensuring technique is right before we add load, and ensuring that we progress exercises extensively before we move into intensive patterns. So when we're looking at principles, guys, some of you would have heard of these before. They're really quite common. Hopefully there's not too much differentiation in terms of how we explain it today. The first one we're going to go over is SAID, so specific adaptation to an imposed demand. Now the SAID principle has four main features, and that is overload or progressive overload, accommodation and its effects, specificity within training, and individualization. When we're looking at overload, it must be something that is above the habitual level. So it has to be above something that the athlete is already able to perform or achieve at. So we're trying to create a stimulus that is greater than what they already have. This involves an increase in intensity or volume. Essentially, we're trying to get a greater effort of output. This can also be achieved through adding new drills, creating variability within the training process. So if we're changing the stimulus by changing the novelness of the exercise, that in itself can create a new mode of demand and a new mode of task on how the athlete executes it, and therefore also increase the overload. So despite even changing the intensity or the volume, if we have some variability to the movement, then we can increase the stimulus. Finally, the load must be manipulated carefully. So we've talked about load as dosage or medicine before. It's really important that we stay within that relative 10% bandwidth, depending on the training stress we're trying to create, to ensure that we're not overreaching or overtraining, or we're not understimulating, okay? So going back to some of those gas models that we've looked at previously. Accommodation. An accommodation is essentially when we're completing the same exercise over a long period of time and we get a decrease in performance gains. So what starts to happen is that the rate in which we're improving at starts to halter. One of the things that's not bad about accommodation is we get a prolonged stimulus. So what I mean by that is a maintenance of the adaptation occurs. So I always talk about the quicker you adapt to something, the quicker your potential to lose that is. The longer you adapt to something, the longer your maintenance of that quality remains. So if it takes you 12 weeks to achieve a 10 kilo increase on your bench press, then it's going to take a short amount of time to lose that relative to the 12 weeks. If over 2 years you increase your bench press over about 10 kilos, the ability to lose that 10 kilos is going to be a lot harder because you've maintained a prolonged stimulus. We've got a chronic change. Now, it's not to say that the change at 12 weeks won't be chronic, but if we're looking at the lifetime experience of an athlete, as long as we're progressing, it's okay because the maintenance of the quality will be more sustainable. And when we're looking at long-term athletic development, maintenance of the quality is a really important thing to develop, is that we might be working with someone for 3 to 4 years or setting them up for 10 years within their career. So our rate of improvement doesn't have to be aggressive, it just needs to be heading in the right direction. When accommodation does occur, it's another warning sign that we need to increase a greater stimulus, okay? So we need to find a way, looking at the overload principles and how we can address that. So specificity, what we're looking here for is a transfer of training results. And we're looking at this in a couple of senses. We're looking at from exercise to sport, from exercise to exercise, so starting to progress the exercise within the training regime. We're looking at transferring from general to specialised as well. So we start to move from our general movement patterns to more specialised movement patterns. There's 2 key things we need to understand or ask ourselves when we're looking at the specificity of exercises or programming is what is the training age of the athlete? If they're in with a relative bandwidth of sort of 1 to 4 years, depending on the sport and the age and their exposure of their training age, then quite typically we refer to this as the general period or the preparatory period. Beyond that adaptation, now obviously people will adapt at different rates, but beyond that adaptation, then we can start to aware that they're going to be more appropriate to adapting to specific movements once those general qualities have been developed. And the other thing we have to ask is how specific is specific? How specific do we need to go? When we're in the gym and we're training physical qualities, we're not focused on developing the sporting skill. That is the motor control element that is outside of our area. There are times and places where we can definitely look at those qualities, especially in jumping and running. But it's important when we're looking at things like our squats and our deadlifts and our strength-based movements, is it's exactly that. We're trying to develop the quality of strength, not the skill. And sometimes the specificity conundrum can confuse people with that. As long as we're sure and aware of what it is that we're trying to develop, then we should be okay. And finally, the last one for the said is individualization. There's a couple of really key things to focus on with individualization, and that is that fundamentally everyone is different. You'll never have 2 athletes that are the same. We have responders and non-responders. So that refers to how different people respond to different adaptations and stress. We've talked about this in the past with explosive athletes and grinders or work capacity athletes. If you try to give a work capacity athlete a full explosive program despite them needing it, it's going to be hard to get a response from that. Vice versa, if you put the explosive athlete through that, they're going to find they naturally flourish in that training environment. So being aware of the profile of the athlete you're working with is going to give you more understanding for what adaptation they're going to respond effectively to, and it gives you an idea of what response you can start to expect. Each program must have individual factors, and this gets really tricky, especially when you're working in team and individual environments. Fortunately for us, we really try to create control of our program at APE to make sure that we can ensure we still maintain individual factors. Now, fundamentally, especially developing athletes, a lot of the same training elements are going to be the same. We're looking for general full body strength capacity development, but fundamentally there's individual things within that we can start to work on. It might be something like someone needs to create intent in their movement. So just changing the tempo of the exercise, or it might be someone that really struggles with mobility elements, ensuring you're doing specific mobility exercises between strength exercises might be a really effective method as well. There's always ways to tie it in. The creativity and the thought process is really up to you. And the more you expose yourself to different training programs and resources and stuff, is the more creative you start to think with this. Again, there's 2 key questions to ask ourselves when we're looking at individualization, and that is fundamentally, who are we working with? So we work with, relatively speaking, adolescent and young adult athletes. So we need to understand that most of them are in that general phase. So we need to make sure that we're still developing those general factors and understand that they might be going through different things like puberty and stuff, understand the consequences of different training elements and the tasks that are involved there. And also looking at what is logistically possible. So if we've got high school athletes, obviously we're restricted with how much we can train straight away. Are they multi-sports? So are they playing multiple sports? These are all things we need to understand to work out what can we physically load them with within their training program. So the FIT principles, now everyone's fairly aware of these. So it's not super groundbreaking or anything, but we'll quickly hash over it just to touch base again. So frequency, we're looking at how many times our training's taking place. And this might be over a week, a month, a year, depending how you're looking at breaking it down. And this will be dictated by 4 key things. It'll be dictated by the athlete's schedule, their work, location, so where they're based, and their sporting requirements or commitments. What phase of development are they in? So again, are they general or specific? Are they preparatory, off-season, in-season, those sorts of things? And then also what type of split you're able to do with them. So if you're able to do an upper-lower split, then you're going to have more frequency. If you've got access to them less, then you're probably looking at more full-body training methods. Intensity, this refers to the effort exerted on a particular exercise or session. Now, it'll be dictated by 3 things: the phase of development, training experience, and the time of season. If we're in the off-season, intensity is not our goal. We want to build some work capacity. We want to freshen up the nervous system. We want to get some of that training stress away from the athlete mentally, and we want to work on more volume. In-season or preparatory phases is the complete opposite. We want to ramp them up. We want to get some intensity and some real vigor in their training. Now, we can measure this by 3 things really effectively. So rate of perceived exertion is an easy one you can do all day, every day. Percentage, so using percentage-based measures based off 1RMs. And also bar speeds. And moving forward, bar speeds is probably the most effective because it gives us a daily reading on where that athlete's at from a preparation perspective. So we can start to factor in external stresses that's going into their training outside of the rigidity of the percentage and RPE. Time refers to the duration of the session. And this will be dictated by, again, the training phase, time of season, type of training split, athlete's level of development, and training frequency. So if we've got an athlete that can only train twice a week, well, realistically, the time of the session is going to be more of that 60 to 90 minutes. If we've got someone that can train every day, then we don't really need to exceed 45 minutes or an hour for a session. Okay, so once we work out these elements, time sort of will take care of itself once we work out what we need to achieve. And finally, type. Now, type refers to the variation of the exercise or the training that you're doing. So this could be the equipment, dumbbells, barbells, body weight. Could be the training method, so a pyramid scheme, a constant plateau, intensification or step periodization methods. Could also be what quality we're trying to develop, so hypertrophy, strength, power, etc. So guys, as I mentioned, these are the main principles. Once we understand them, when it comes to writing programs and stuff, and when you get stuck, if you refer back to these principles, it makes your decision making really easy. And when we're doing that, it gives us more context for how we create our ideas and our thought processes behind our program. So despite this not being a direct step-by-step how to write a program, this is more a longer-term approach to understanding how you conceptualize what you want to develop with your athletes. So we can get this principles thought process. When it comes to actual program design, it almost takes care of itself as long as we ask ourselves these questions and tick off these measures. So there's 2 main programming tools that we look at. Now there's a few other online softwares that are popping up. TeamBuilder is probably the most common and it's the one we use. So that's the one we're going to focus on today. And the other one is obviously Excel. So I'm sure some of you had experience with Excel in different elements in the past. Excel is still a fantastic tool. I use it for lots of different programming tools. I use it for lots of business related things, as well as most of the periodization work and planning is done on Excel. And that's ultimately because it gives us the freedom to create whatever we want. However, when we're looking at sort of going more down a professional route and having more accessibility to athletes and stuff, the modernization of apps and technologies such as TeamBuilder has really allowed the opportunities for program development to really accelerate. So I'm just going to quickly go over some of the pros and cons of both of these and how we use them. So Excel, it basically gives us the freedom to implement any formula, calculation or design desirable. So anything you can really think of, you can design with Excel. It's fantastic in that sense, and the freedom to go quite elaborate with it is endless. It's great for highly complex data collection and analysis. So it gives us lots of freedom to really get some, really good technical information there. And it's cost effective, okay? So it's basically free, really simple in that sense. The cons, it has a small capacity to operate online or via distance. So it's hard to integrate with online athletes or on a larger scale without preparing lots of documents. Generally requires multiple transfers of data from hard copy to soft copy. So generally in training environments, it involves software design, hardware print off, completion, and then re-uploading from a data collection perspective, and it can become quite time consuming. Whereas with Team Builder, again, fast, simple, and extremely effective for strength and conditioning environments. So it's specifically designed for strength and conditioning sessions. It's a great way of duplicating features for large groups and teams. So it's really fast about how to provide access to teams and squads at a rapid rate. And it's really easy for viewing program design and tool implementation. So it's a really easy way to view overview of months, weeks of training, looking at micro and macro cycles, and being able to see the picture. It's really quite a smooth system. The cons with Team Builder is obviously the costs. So you're looking at upwards of $1,000 for fully fledged software. However, there is a trial package, which I'll talk to you guys about, which might be effective to get started. And it requires a lot of initial labor during the setup phase. So lots of, basically it works as a clean slate. So it'll give you the software, and then it's up to you to enter in all the exercises, videos, and classifications. And that can be quite time consuming. However, it's still a task that you'll need to complete in Excel. So it's neither here nor there in terms of time. It's mainly the cost. Team Builder doesn't quite give you the freedom in terms of some of the other Excel tools we can use in strength and conditioning. However, from a program design perspective, it's far superior. So I just want to go over now some of the training guidelines, and these are more references or tools. So I don't need to go through it too much, and you'll see these on all different research and articles and stuff. Most of the ones that we cover today are either from the NSCA or ASCA guidelines from previous texts. Basically, this is a nice flow series which demonstrates what repetition range we're developing, which qualities. So obviously we can see where the yellow markers are, that's where we're in a good zone to develop those training qualities, whereas the green is going to be harder. So obviously when we're doing 16 to 20 reps, strength, power, and hypertrophy aren't going to be super high. However, muscular endurance is going to be quite high. That sweet spot for hypertrophy is there in that sort of 8 to 12 rep range, and then also that strength power from those low 2 to 5 reps. Now, this isn't a complete rigid way of thinking. Of course, if you're working with a developing athlete, there'll still be development of all qualities, but when we're specifically looking at targeting a range, this tool is quite helpful. Just a small guideline again from the NSCA guidelines regarding training volume. So just a breakdown of certain qualities and how many sets and reps we can hit for these. Again, just a guideline, so there's bandwidths to work in between with these, but it gives you a framework or a starting point. And then you can see how the athlete starts to respond and adapt, and that can dictate whether you need to dose more or dose less. This is a really effective one from Mladen Jovanovic, who runs complementary training and is bringing out some really useful texts regarding sports science. Really big on data and really good summaries. I found his charts to be probably the most accurate in my training experience. This is a really effective one that compares effort levels and uses Prilipin chart guidelines to give us more of an indication. So if you guys aren't aware, Prilipin chart is data collected over early days of powerlifting. So Charles Prilipin put that together and basically gives us rep ranges in terms of how to dose athletes in terms of what volumes to hit. And then he's converted that in regards to effort levels. So medium hard, near max, and max effort. And this can be used in a variety of ways. You might find that medium hard athletes effort might be appropriate dosage for a beginner athlete, and then progress to hard in the next cycle, and then near max in the third cycle, and then repeat medium hard. That could be a way to progress. It could also be a way to progress from year to year. So you might do a year of all medium hard, a year of all hard, and then a year of near max effort, perhaps. going in and out, because that near max effort will be quite taxing. But it just gives you a nice interplay of how to dose with athletes. So obviously if we want a more aggressive dose, then we're going to work towards a near max effort, max effort. That might also occur if you only have an athlete for a short period of time, you're looking for more of a shock dose. But when we're looking for more of that maintenance, long-term development, then those medium hard and hard effort levels are going to be really appropriate. So have a look, guys. You can pause this slide and sort of take it in, have a look at the numbers and start to see the interplay there, and start to see the relationship between numbers. It gives you an idea of what you can expect athletes to work at. It also helps you understand where athletes are at within their training. It's a really helpful guide, this one. So finally, I just want to go over a couple of the program examples. So the first one I've got here is a true powerlifting example, and this is from Sebastian Oreb's Australian Strength Coach program. Some of you will probably be familiar with his work. He's a world-leading powerlifting coach. So this is a true powerlifting program designed to develop exactly that, powerlifting strength, okay? So what we can see here is that the exercise selection is very low. The volume is very high. The intensity is designed to be high. And the rest is very, very aggressive. So the goal here is to complete strength effort after strength effort after strength effort with, guess what? The surprise at the end being strength, okay? So this is a very true strength program. The second example I have here is quite similar to that. And this is for someone who's just looking for general strength development. So what we can see here is that across the 3 weeks, I've used a dynamic effort approach where we've gone from a barbell front squat at 5 times 6 reps to a barbell back squat of 5 times 5 reps, and then a low bar back squat of 5 times 4 reps. The same thing is done on the sumo side, where we're moving from an exercise that will, generally speaking, won't be able to load as much. So your barbell low bar squat should be a lot heavier than your front squat. So therefore the front squat is at the high rep range. We get the progressive overload there, and then we get the development of the strength accessory exercises below that. Okay, so again, not a huge amount of exercises, but we can see the volume is quite high. So this is sort of in between someone who's wanting to do just powerlifting training, and we're looking for someone who wants to develop general strength development. The final one we have here is an AFL athlete. So now we're looking at the interplay of developing different qualities, still with a strength focus. Now, more of a complex Excel spreadsheet. To give you a bit of an explanation, the bottom tables, what we're looking at is the 2 main lifts. So our T1 and T2, this is using a tier system, which is Joe Ken's work, which I've talked about previously. So the tier 1 and the tier 2 lift are designed to have program numbers plugged in below, and they are tracked. And then you can see the accessory exercises paired with that. And then you can see the accessory exercises listed in day 1, day 2, and day 3. So predominantly full body workouts with a strength power focus at the start, and then an accessory strength hypertrophy, strength endurance focus towards the end. So again, have a pause of it, look at how it's break down. The important thing when you're looking at program examples is to look at it, break it down, and work out how it links together. Work out what is the split of exercises, what is the push to pull patterns, what is the breakup between the days. And the more exposure or familiarization you have with these, the easier it is to start developing your own thought processes. So going back, looking at the powerlifting one, to the strength one, and now the athletic training environment one, you can start to get some context about how the principles transfer across, and also an understanding for what is realistic load management as well. So finally, guys, a couple of recommended resources. If you go into any of the ASCA texts or NSCA texts, they're safe zones. So if you jump on their websites, any of their textbooks, if you've done ASCA level 1, the actual resources for that, the framework for programming is really simple. It doesn't actually change. So you train the most advanced athlete in the world, those training principles don't really change, okay? Anyone that we'll work with, we stay within those bandwidths to a degree. There might be certain times where we implement some of our own hybrid methods, but generally speaking, that's really all we need. So use those 2 main resources. The third one there is Dan Baker's Strength website, which I've referenced before. Again, really simple articles up there, really simple breakdowns and applicable things you can use. And then I've got 3 texts, which I really recommend for just basic athletic program design, which gives you an understanding about what's realistic load to dose people with. And that is Everyday's Game Day by Mark Verstegen, and Core Performance. Core Performance is more of a general POPs resource, but still uses athletic training styles. And then the third one is Maximum Strength by Eric Cressy. Quite a simple read that goes over a 16-week program, but it's a really good book to, I guess, have a look at how some of the best coaches in the world keep their strength training so simple and their programming so simple, and the bandwidth which they work with. So what's basic exercise structure, how are they splitting up during the week, and you can really take some confidence behind these proven and successful programs and understand the simplicity in the programming and how effective it is. And what you'll find in any of these resources is that the programming is so simple. And it goes back to our philosophy at the start, is that if they can't complete the program, then the program is wasted. So that's why I really like these references. Work out what it is that's really realistically attainable for the athlete to achieve, and then find the best way to dose them with that program. Finally, guys, some references as well. The only one that I haven't really spoken about is probably the Super Training Verkhoshansky, which is really quite an advanced text. By all means, you can definitely utilize it as a reference point. And if you can get your hands on it, there's some phenomenal information. It is probably the Strength and Conditioning Bible, if there was one. So there's some really good resources in that if you're looking for specific information on training, training zones, okay?